There will be sort of a time when people don't want their fiat currencies anymore. And that will be the time where you've got to feel like, good, I've got some Bitcoin. And so that's the way I would look at it is, yeah, I wouldn't think of it as something you would buy your food, your clothing, and your shelter with today, but it won't be long before you do.
What goes through your mind as an investor, as a crypto advocate, as a Bitcoiner, when you see markets correct like this? What's the first thing that you think?
How much can I buy? The opportunity is vast because I still look at Bitcoin as it's just better currency, and eventually better currency will win out. Better products eventually win out. Weird things can happen. The black swans happen. These strange occurrences that you think will never happen, they happen. So just be ready for those. That has helped me as an investor to sort of make sure that my family is well taken care of first, then to make sure that I'm taking good, solid risks, good risks on things that might really happen and change everything. And invest for a good cause. Like, it should be good in your heart. Whatever it is you're investing in, it should feel good in your heart. And that's why I'm so excited about Bitcoin. It's like trust, it's freedom, it's global, it's open, cross-border, everything.
The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves. Challenging our beliefs, sharing our vulnerability, overcoming our fears, transforming ourselves so we can transform the world. How far can we go?
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is...
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Tim Draper, the venture capital investor, entrepreneur, and spokesperson for all things Bitcoin, blockchain, and decentralized finance. You are the founder of Draper Associates, Draper Fisher Jurvetson, and the Draper Venture Network, and recognized as one of the most prominent technology investors in the last 30 years in companies like Hotmail, Skype, Tesla, Coinbase, Robinhood, SpaceX, Tezos, and more. You are a leading advocate for Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, making your first moves back in 2014 when you purchased 50,000 Bitcoin that had been seized from the Silk Road. Since then, you've invested in over 50 cryptocurrency companies and are ranked in the top 100 most powerful people in finance by Worth magazine, top 10 on the Forbes Midas list, and top 20 most influential people in crypto. You have said that Bitcoin will hit $250,000 by next year and believe that both women and retail investors will hold the key to the next bull market. Tim, welcome to London Real.
Terrific. Oh my gosh, what a great intro. Thank you so much, Brian. It's wonderful to be on your show.
It's great to have you here, and perfect timing probably, because I guess we can talk about this sell-off today across the markets, and Bitcoin I think is dipped below 23,000 and it's probably around there for now. You've been in this game for quite a while, Tim. You've had them for almost 10 years, Bitcoin and crypto. What goes through your mind as an investor, as a crypto advocate, as a Bitcoiner, when you see markets correct like this? What's the first thing that you think?
How much can I buy? The opportunity is vast because I still look at Bitcoin as it's just better currency. And eventually better currency will win out. Better products eventually win out. And the fiat currencies are tied to governments and banks, and there's a lot of friction there. And then there are some politics that will print too much fiat here or too little there or whatever. Bitcoin is just, there are only 21 million of them, so they're going to be a great hedge against inflation. And they have a great system of transparency. It's global, it's open. There's so many great things to it. And I believe that once the women start, and they are starting to, it used to be 1 in 14 Bitcoin wallets were owned by a woman, and now it's 1 in 6. And I think it's going to be, at parity very soon, because women control about 80% of retail spending. And when a retailer realizes that they can get a 2 to 4% discount by just taking Bitcoin, they're going to be encouraging all their customers to use Bitcoin. And that I think will be the key turning point, where at first it's like we have early adopters and they're kind of in here and they're speculators, and there's some other people that are participating in this new Bitcoin ecosystem. But the masses are going to be coming in very soon. And once they do, it'll be all at once. And think of when you can buy your food, your clothing, and your shelter all in Bitcoin. There would be no reason to hold on to fiat currency, because it's just not as good. It's tied to some political force. It has to go through the banks. Bitcoin's much less friction, and it's it's global. So, and it's sort of, this is an exciting time, and I knew this was going to go through fits and starts as it matures, as it becomes more centrally used and centrally available around the world. I'm very excited about what's going on with Bitcoin, and I do look at these machinations. And this is, it looks like we're having, the equivalent of a 1929 collapse today, but we've got a better technology in Bitcoin. So I'm a big believer. I've continued to buy Bitcoin over the years, and have felt that at some point there will be sort of a run on the dollar, or certainly there have been runs on the peso and the Nigerian naira, but there will be runs on the dollar where people are running away from the dollar and moving into Bitcoin. So very exciting times. I know there will be other challenges for Bitcoin along the way, but it's just better currency, and things that are better for the long term for the consumer usually do win out in the end. But in the meantime, you're going to see, central banks getting a little nervous, governments getting a little nervous, big governments getting nervous. Little governments look at this as an opportunity.
Right.
Okay. Very interesting. It's geopolitical. This is a big deal.
And in the meantime, a lot of people live in their fiat currencies. And so when they have an asset like Bitcoin that's come off, 10% or 20% or 30%, how should they emotionally react to that? When it's sometimes harder to see a long-term perspective.
Well, I think the way they should look at their Bitcoin is that sort of a bet on the future. And there will be a time when, there will be sort of a time when people don't want their fiat currencies anymore. And that will be the time where you've got to feel like, good, I've got some Bitcoin. And so that's the way I would look at it is, I wouldn't think of it as something you would buy your food, your clothing, and your shelter with today, but it won't be long before you do. Although when I was buying a house, they knew who was buying it from them, and they asked me for Bitcoin. And when I was donating money, they knew who I was, and they wanted Bitcoin. They didn't want dollars. So Stanford University was asking me to donate money in Bitcoin, and they didn't want dollars.
Right.
I was saying, no, I'm not giving away my Bitcoin.
And short term, do you expect we're still going to have maybe more sell-offs in the price or more volatility? And do you still stand by your prediction of $250,000 Bitcoin by next year?
Oh, absolutely. It feels like that is happening. And it sort of started with El Salvador and OpenNode making it very easy for retailers to accept Bitcoin, Cryptio allowing businesses to do perfect audits with Cryptio, and so all the accounting is done. So yes, this is, and that'll be sort of the beginning. And I think it's just up from there. So this is, yeah, we're going to see a lot of volatility. You might see another jump down. You might see a lot of different things happen. And a lot of people got leveraged up in Bitcoin, and they're the ones who are kind of forced to sell down in a time like this. And that's kind of the nature of DeFi, is that people can get kind of a little too far over their skis.
Right. And 10x for a price increase is realistic for something like Bitcoin by next year? I mean, even we see a lot of technology adoption. Obviously, we see it's a better tech, and you've got a history of examining tech. And I think a lot of people believe it'll happen in the next 10 years, but you still think it'll happen even sooner?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's been like more than 100x. So I think 10x is, well, at 10x, it's going to be bouncing up and down for a long time. And I think if you are a hodler, somebody who holds on for dear life, because you like the future that it's going to bring, you like this trust and freedom that comes with Bitcoin. I'm wearing a Bitcoin tie, and on the other side, it says freedom and trust. That comes from a currency that is open and global and transparent. There's a lot of trust there. You're gonna be holding on, knowing that at some point in the future, and my prediction was end of this year or early next year, that you're going to see a steep climb in the price, and that will, and on a day like today, doesn't feel like it's really going to happen. But if you kind of take a long view, you say, oh yeah, it probably will.
Right.
There probably won't be, trust and freedom are so important. Trust, think of governments. Singapore went from the poorest to the richest country by just when Lee Kuan Yew came in there and built trust one brick at a time into Singapore. It was one of the least trusted countries, and now it's probably the most trusted country. And they used to be one of the poorest, now they're one of the richest. And then freedom is so important because there's no freedom in North Korea, and there's a lot of freedom in South Korea. And that freedom and that decentralized government has made it so that 70 years in, the average South Korean is now 460 times as rich as the average North Korean, and they're now 4 inches taller. The average South Korean's 4 inches taller than the average North Korean. And that's nutrition or whatever, but it's clear that centralized control doesn't work. I mean, Putin is screwing things. One guy decides he's going to go to war with a country, and all those people get affected. Or in China, President Xi decides he's going to lock everybody down, and he destroys his entire supply chain. I mean, these guys, they should have decentralized decision making.
Right. And what's the state of freedom and trust in the United States right now? Where are we? Because you come from a long line of venture cap investors where I think those free capital markets allowed you to build some incredible technology. Now we see places like crypto.com and FTX. I mean, they're not even based in America now. And you're seeing, maybe for the first time, and maybe you can tell me this, in technology history for the past 50, 70 years, maybe innovation happening abroad more so than the US.
Yeah, when I met with the team from El Salvador that works with the president there, I was jealous. I was thinking, oh my gosh, you guys are going to be so far ahead of us in all of these technologies around Bitcoin. You've already got the retail spending happening. You've already got people paying taxes in Bitcoin. You've already built accounting systems around Bitcoin. You're way ahead of us, and that made me feel like we really need to decentralize in the U.S. We have a problem. There's Somehow the government has become all powerful and almighty, and people say, "Oh, well, we need better politicians," but it turns out the bureaucrats really run the country. Politicians really don't have much power, and the bureaucrats are just growing like the blob. It just keeps growing, and the bureaucrats just decide, hey, this is what we're going to do, and we are at their mercy. I mean, there is no natural predator to the FDA. There's no unless Congress actually does something there, or, eliminates it or whatever. The SEC, any of these three-letter words, are all government entities that are slowing progress, and it's because they're centralized. And so this Bitcoin sort of alerted me to the idea that decentralized everything is better. You can't make good decisions in a centralized way, not knowing how other people are going to respond to it. And that decentralization is very important for the US, and we better wake up. I mean, it was all centralized in San Francisco, and it quadrupled the homeless. You just got to watch out. You need a democracy. You need the people to decide, and the government to work for the people. That makes a big difference. If the people start working for the government, you got centralized control, and you start making really bad decisions.
I think Peter Thiel recently called it like the gerontocracy when he was at the Bitcoin conference, where it was a bunch of old people making these decisions. And I know you've said that kind of back in the heyday with you, Bill Clinton with the internet was kind of like, let's let it go. Let's let people develop on it. Do you think it's getting better? I mean, I think it was Scaramucci that recently said the next presidential candidate will maybe run on a pro-crypto platform, because politicians are starting to see that it's a great way to get the public on board. Do you think we will move to a better regulatory environment soon?
I think we better. I think we've got, Mayor Suarez down in Florida has really embraced it. The mayor of New York, the new mayor of New York, has also embraced it. I think it is a generational thing. A lot of older people have this feeling, and I can say this because I'm old. They have this feeling like we like it the way it is. We really don't want to change anything. And then the younger generation says, "Hey, this dollar thing, this isn't my Oldsmobile. This is yours, and we've got a much better currency, and we're going to use it." And so I know younger people would much rather have, 23? They would much rather have one Bitcoin than $23,000 today. Older people would rather have the $23,000, and that is a generational shift that's happening. And as we older people die off, and the younger people come and start running the country, you're going to see a very pro-crypto environment. But I'm hoping it comes soon, because in the meantime, El Salvador, Central African Republic, Japan, Singapore, Switzerland are all leading, jumping ahead of the US in this field. And this is sort of like being early in the internet. And the US really benefited from Bill Clinton's hands-off approach to the internet.
Is this going to
And
be
there
bigger
were a
than?
lot of,
Will
oh
this
yeah,
be-
it's going to be much bigger
how much bigger?
because because the internet affected communications, information, gaming, entertainment, taxis, hotels. Those are all pretty big industries, but these are the biggest industries in the world. It's banking, it's finance, it's insurance, it's government. Those are the industries that are going to be affected by Bitcoin and the blockchain. So this is going to be a bigger transformation, and you can tell it's making the powers that be nervous. It's making, in fact, the world was doing so well while the geographic borders were falling, and then the political powers decided they wanted to centralize again because they were feeling they were losing their power. And so I think they've made a lot of mistakes recently. Hopefully they're not irreparable, but yeah, hopefully we'll have a new team that comes in the next, I don't know, when's the next election?
Couple of years.
I'm hoping we get a whole new sweep of people who kind of are looking, that are younger, more flexible of mind, and are willing to embrace this new technology and do great things with it. There is a U.S.-centric thought that the dollar has been really good for us because it's prevalent around the world. It's in a lot of countries. But what they're missing is the last 30 years have really been driven by the internet. The next 30 years are going to be driven by Bitcoin. And if you miss that because you're trying to control everybody and everything, you're making a huge mistake for your country. And that's a lot of people, 300 million people in the US.
Yeah. And one thing what I find interesting about you, Tim, is that you're a big fan of Bitcoin, but you're also a fan of decentralized finance and NFTs, and you love all of it. Can you talk about that? Because I'm guessing some of the Bitcoin maximalists disagree with you on that. How come you are so open-minded?
Well, I'm always looking for what's next. That's my job. I'm a venture capitalist, and I'm always looking for what's next. And I've seen many cycles of different technologies that were really exciting at one point, and then new things came along. So I like all the various technologies that are happening out there. I do believe that this bear market is better for Bitcoin than for any of the other currencies, because there will be this, they call it a rush to quality, but the way I look at it is the way I look at Microsoft, where Microsoft was the operating system for all of the software companies. And then all these software companies were developed on it, clipart and whatever else. And then Microsoft sort of usurped the spreadsheet, the word processor, the database, and the PowerPoint. And they brought them all into the operating system. So they were able to win bigger there. And I think the same thing's going to happen with Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin will be they will take on the smart contracts, the NFTs, the DeFi. It'll be this flight to quality. And even a day like today, where everybody's down, Bitcoin's down less than the rest of these smaller, less important cryptocurrencies. And so for a time, I suspect that that Bitcoin will be dominant, but there will be others that come up. I mean, Microsoft was big, but there were plenty of other winners that came out of the .com crash.
Right.
This is that kind of a time.
And as a venture capitalist, I mean, I have a bunch of people that watch this show and in my academy that are always looking, at early stage companies and, like you said, what's going to be next here in the blockchain space. How do you look at that? I know you've always said you're trying to look 5 or 10 years ahead, which in crypto time is like 100 years ahead, I guess.
Right.
But how would you explain what goes on in your brain when it comes to investing in the blockchain space, and what kind of advice do you give to people?
Boy, inside my brain, you probably don't want to go there.
What's it like in there?
Well, the way I look at it is I say, what is better for the consumer? And when I meet a new entrepreneur, I think, what if this works? What if they are successful with what their vision is? How big can it get? And sometimes I think, this could get bigger than even the entrepreneur believes. And that's kind of what I'm looking for. I'm saying 5 to 10 years from now, if this is successful, how great would that be? And Bitcoin, if this is successful, which it looks like it is, how great will that be? And it will be great because it'll give our humanity an anthropological leap forward, because borders will mean less and less. Nationalism will become more like a competitive governance where they're competing for us, and they're accountable to whoever they work for, as they should be, rather than sort of telling us all what to do and having us all just walk along like automatons. So I'm always looking for that big change, and Bitcoin seems to be bringing that change. The internet was a big breakthrough because we could communicate across borders for free. That was a big breakthrough, and that allowed all these countries to realize that their borders were not that important. All of a sudden, they realized with Bitcoin that they have to pull those borders back up because they're worried about their own central control over currency, because all of a sudden Bitcoin is the currency for the world, and they're going, wait a second, this is the way we've been controlling our people, is through our currency, and if you've got this currency for the world, what are you thinking? And so then they put up borders and barriers and trade wars and all that stuff, and it makes no sense for the long haul, but for the aggrandizement of certain politicians, it seemed to work for them. And so Putin and Xi Xi shut down all Bitcoin, and he had 40% of the mining capacity in China, and he shut it down. The guy clearly doesn't have much economic sense, but he was so paranoid and wanted to control his people so much that he just disassembled an industry. And now he's disassembling their supply chain. The guy is, brilliant politically, but boy, he is not too smart economically.
Right, so it goes back to freedom and trust. That's how you're really going to get the most prosperity. You see China with a version, Putin with a version, and now America with a version too. They all have something to aspire to in your mind. Like, it needs to be more free, and there's to be more trust. And
we were built on freedom. We were built on America was built on freedom. China, when they became free for that 40-year period, they went from being, economically, they're number 2 now, and they were maybe number 8 before. And the quality of life there has gone way up. All these things that happened they went way up. And then Xi came in and decided that he wanted to control everybody and didn't trust anybody and took away all their freedoms. And he's wondering why entrepreneurship has stopped dead in its tracks there.
Right.
In the US, we've got the same, we got to fight about it. It's an ongoing battle. But what's weird is each political party takes on, some things that are more freedom and some things that are more central control. And there doesn't seem to be a political party that's working for trust and freedom. And that's the one that needs to flourish, because our two political parties are getting so far apart. They're just doing, if you say something kind of outrageous and you're a politician, you get notoriety. And so they do a lot of that. And then once somebody in your party says something outrageous, you got to to support it. I mean, it makes no sense. Anyway, we've got to do something about our duopoly in the political spectrum in the U.S. But just hopefully we'll get a great charismatic leader who's a real believer in crypto, and they start and freedom and trust, and they trust the people. It's amazing when I'm in the business of handing money out for stock, and that's a big trust thing going both ways. It's big trust, and it's a great business. And we set them free. We say, we don't do milestones based, funding. We just say, here, go for it, and so we're not hovering over them like a helicopter mom. We're just sort of handing out the money and saying, go, be free, go do what you had planned to do. And most of them, the vast majority, go do everything they can to be successful, but also to live up to that trust. Trust is a big deal. Yeah. And if I were running a big company, I would do the same. I would say, look, I don't know all the little intricacies of all the employees. I got 100,000 employees or something. I don't know what they're all doing or thinking, or how I don't know how the dock worker, is loading the boxes on. I'd rather he figure out the best way to load the boxes on. And so decentralization of decision making is really important.
Yeah. What keeps you awake at night these days, Tim? Like, what's the big thing on your mind, when it comes to maybe your funds, your investments, or just things geopolitically?
Oh, I sleep pretty well. The world does get better. It always seems to get better. I mean, there are these times, there are dark times, the press sells fear, so everybody is very fearful who follows the press. But the world does get better, and that fearfulness actually encourages entrepreneurs to act, and that drives their thinking. So they look at fear as an opportunity. Other people look at fear as fear, and fear, according to Frank Herbert in Dune, is the mind killer. You don't want fear. At a time like this, crypto's way down. There's a tendency to be fearful. But you really need to think the opposite way. You should have been fearful when everybody and their mother was, day trading in crypto. But instead, you should be more opportunistic during a time where the world is fearful. So it's a little contrarian, but fear really does. It's weird. People like watching the news so they can get that little fear rush. And it's hard to tell them that you realize that they are selling you fear so that you are more fearful, and you won't take risks in your life, and you won't try things, and you'll have difficulty being successful. The people who are super successful, whenever they see the news or any input, they think, well, where'd that come from? Who was it? What's their angle? Why do they care? Ask a lot of questions before you accept as gospel, whatever they call science, or whatever they call, the mask mandate, or whatever it was. It's pretty interesting to see that it didn't matter which state it was, whether they had a mask mandate or not. The virus spread exactly along the same lines, no matter what state it was. And across the board, it's, 70% of us have had the virus. Kind of interesting, because when it's centrally controlled like that, there is a tendency to put a quick Band-Aid on it. And that's often the wrong decision. The right decision sometimes is to do nothing, or to trust the people, or to encourage people to do as they think is right for them. and everybody benefits from that freedom.
We saw that in many states that just had the power back of decisions to the people and said, go ahead, you make the best decision or the most prudent decision. I wanted to ask you quickly about technology networks, Web 2.0 and freedom, because a couple of years ago when that was all kicking off, we came kind of head to head with YouTube with some banning and censorship. And recently we've seen Elon Musk go in and potentially buy Twitter, which started off almost as a free speech platform and turned into maybe a controlled speech platform. Just curious what you think about some of our Web 2.0 tech platforms and their take on freedom. And do you think Elon's move is a move forward, or is it ultimately going to be a Web 3.0 solution that solves this?
Well, Elon has great vision, and he tries a lot of interesting things. And I think he saw what I saw, which was Jack Dorsey is a free speech guy. I've met with him, and he believes in free speech. He worked on Twitter, made it as free speech as possible. And then I guess he just got surrounded by people who all felt like they needed to control the narrative. And it lost that free speech. And they just decided we're gonna only allow people on Twitter that think this way and not allow that minority opinion to exist. But you need that minority opinion to get a better decision overall. You need everybody to sort of fight it out and negotiate and debate until something even better happens. And that's what free speech is all about. Well, Elon saw that and Twitter going the wrong way, and he thought, well, I got a bunch of money. I can buy Twitter. And so I'll buy it and make it free speech again for the world. That I don't know whether that'll come through or not. That's a part of a negotiation, but I do know that the typical scenario is that a startup comes and fills that gap. And we've seen unstoppable domains come in and say, hey, you can buy, Brian.crypto and put whatever you want on it. So it's free speech, and we have no control over it, so we can't stop you. So you go ahead, say whatever you want to say, put it out there. You'll put your identity on there. You can trade your crypto on there, and you can sell product on there. You can do whatever you want to do. And that will probably take over this social media world eventually. That, whether it's Unstoppable or some other company, I think free speech will win out, and it'll start with a minority who's been muted by whoever those people at Facebook are who think they know better than we do how to run our lives.
And it'll probably have a crypto component to it as well, which would ensure that freedom of speech, because the money is not centrally controlled as well, because that's ultimately how they stop your freedom.
Yeah. Money's a big part of it. And now we have money that encourages freedom. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
Free money.
What's next for you? Because you talked about starting a fund in Bitcoin that would then make investments in Bitcoin, pay employees in Bitcoin, pay dividends in Bitcoin, pay taxes in Bitcoin. Is this something you think will happen in the next few years as far as something you want to do?
Yeah, I want to do it. But there's way too many regulations. And what's weird is it would pay higher taxes. It would be a bigger deal for the US if they allowed somebody to create a subledger that was like a walled garden of a Bitcoin fund, where everybody pays everybody in Bitcoin all the way down the line. And we keep track through smart contracts for our LPs. So the goal is raise money in Bitcoin, invest it in Bitcoin, have the companies pay their employees and suppliers in Bitcoin, and have all the taxes automatically calculated in Bitcoin. So zero accounting fees, except maybe paying a crypto SaaS product. That is something that could be really good for a country. And I could create that fund in El Salvador today. And so all of a sudden, El Salvador has another 5-year lead. So you start piling up 5-year leads, and then you project out 40 years, and El Salvador's one of the richest countries in the world from one of the poorest. And the rich countries become more, they drop in value. The largest countries are the ones that don't want things to change much because they've kind of been able to bully people. And the smaller countries want things to change. And we're going to see a reversal of fortune if the US doesn't wake up.
Yeah. I just want to quickly get your thoughts on NFTs, because you've said that, you know, the future is potentially NFTs as in owning your identity, owning your medical history. You see a lot of positives on putting a lot of things on the blockchain. Just your take on NFTs and what they are now and what they could be in the future.
Yeah, NFTs are the way I look at them they are bespoke, so they are like one-ofs, and they are you cannot, they're immutable. You can't be changed. So that is really valuable in a lot of different industries. And the first one that really jumped into it was the art world, where they said, oh my gosh, you mean I can sell a painting and still own some value in it, so that when it gets resold, I get some money. When it gets and I can also sell a bunch of prints of it, and that can take, you know, and they can be limited prints, and they can promote the value of that one painting. There's so many things that you can do in art. And then people took on the idea of like Bored Apes, where you can own your specific Bored Ape, and it can take on a personality. You can apply personality to it. It can end up being a movie or a comic or a whatever, and it can have its own way of operating, and it is still immutable. And then anything you own, your title, Proppy does this. They can put your real estate title on the blockchain, and that won't change. And ultimately, you'll have all titles on the blockchain, title to real estate, but it could be titled to anything. And there will be no discussion of who owns what property, and there won't be any need for title insurance because it will be on.
To continue watching the rest of the episode for free, visit our website londonreal.tv or click the link in the description below.